Hello and welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Patty Carroll. Patty, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. So let's start off by sharing some works of yours. So I went on your website, which is quite extensive, and I chose some images that really I responded well to. So I was hoping you could tell me just a little bit about the pictures that I'm showing. What in particular, what am I looking at here?
Well, this is interesting. You're starting with this. This is actually an assemblage, and it's 14 inches by 14 inches. And the bird and the flowers are sitting like coming out of the background. The background is a floral fabric. And I did about 250 of these, and I used them in an installation that was in several places. It was at 21C Museum in Kansas City. It was in St. Joe at a museum there, etc. So it's been around, and these pieces are actually based on some still lifes that I was making with birds, and the bird to me was a another word for woman, and and most of my work has to do with a female, a woman alone in her home, etc. And she's dealing with her domestic stuff. And one day I heard these birds outside my window, and I was like, oh my God, right. I never see these birds. I just hear them. Anyway, it got me all started on making still lifes with these ceramic domesticated birds.
Hmm. So I was fascinated by them because, I first knew your work through photography,
Right.
whereas these are sort of, these little assemblages. I'm kind of curious, was this something that you had always made, or did the photographs lead to this?
The photographs led to them.
Okay.
Part of it was that somehow I had this accumulation of way too many birds.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I got to do something to get rid of these birds. And so I started sticking them on these panels. And I kind of thought of them as like a wall quilt, and, that came out from the wall. And then it just, it went crazy. It kind of went too far. It's
How
typical of
many birds is too many?
me. I don't know.
Like
But this is
10 or
one of
100?
I have no idea how many I have. It's way too many. This is one of the photographs, one of the still life photographs of using the birds themselves, as opposed
So,
to the last one, which was an actual assemblage.
right. So it's produced in the same way, but then the photograph is the final print, is the final
Yes,
piece of artwork.
yes, yes,
Okay. So I was
exactly.
curious about the size of these. So when you print them out, what's your preferred print size for something like this?
For these, I kind of keep them. The largest I like to see them is about 22 inches square.
Okay.
Every time I make them larger, the birds just look completely out of scale.
Hmm.
The Because these birds are, only like this big, or depending on which birds I'm using, they just kind of lose their oomph.
Hmm.
Whereas the other pictures that I make with my anonymous women, those are printed like 40 inches.
Are
So
they? Okay.
yeah,
Well, I like this one in particular. I've always loved Delftware, so
right.
these blues really hit home for me. I really love it. I'd love to see this actually in person. Speaking of
Okay,
in person, you have some installations on your website, uh,
right.
and I saw this one. So, is this the collection of the assemblages that you were talking about?
Yes, this is one of the installations of that work. And what's kind of fun about this is you notice the background is also a floral
Hmm.
fabric. And so some of the pieces actually have motion detectors on them, so that when you walk by them, they start to chirp and tweet, and you know.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fun
Yeah.
exhibition.
Where is this now?
They are all sitting in my studio in Indiana
Okay.
in what I call my the garages for them, which are, you know, pink foam that you get at Home Depot or Lowe's, that is insulation foam, and I had to make these garages for them because they stick up; they're not flat.
Right.
And so half of my studio it's sitting with these. If you know anyone that would like an installation and would like to keep it, I would be so happy.
Right. Funny enough, my spare room is a little too small for this, so
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to take
Yeah.
a pass on it. So I've got at least 2 images of photographs of yours. And this is what I was first exposed to your work, and I
Right.
absolutely love these. I consider me a fan.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
in particular, it's not just the narrative for me, but it's also the geometry and the palette that you choose for these images. Can you tell me just a bit about this?
Okay, well, it's true that we, whenever we're going to set something up, I kind of decide on a main color or a main set of colors. In this case, they are contrasting colors, the wood against the green. Um, and and each one of these photographs it's really important that there is not just a pattern, but a shape to the image. And so each one is considered in terms of how it's shaped, etc. I also really like to make pretty pictures because it pulls the viewer in, and then then you kind of look at it and then you kind of go, oh, there's another message in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the storyline that you have within your images. I mean, it's not, to me, that was paramount for what I saw. It wasn't just the color. It was, as soon as a picture gives me more questions than answers, then I just have to dig in, right?
Excellent.
So
Yes.
I think that one really does that. This was actually the first one that I chose. Again, we're going to talk about color in a little bit, but I just love the color collection in this. So is this something that you worked on to create this environment, or was this a flash in your head like, oh, I know I want to have the figure sitting like this with this in the background? How does that?
It's never totally planned out. We start setting things up and then change them about 100 times before
Okay.
it actually happens. And also a lot of times, like, we'll set this up, like, for instance, this blue bookcase, and then we didn't have enough blue stuff. So then we got to go shopping and get some more stuff.
When you say we, who's we?
I have an assistant. Her name's
Okay.
Aint-Bad. She's a very, very capable person.
Okay.
And recently I injured my arm. And so my I don't know, I can't lift a whole bunch of stuff. So she's been like actually making a lot of the pictures while I kind of go, hey, no, move it over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Every artist needs a little bit of help.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the last piece I chose. And like the previous one, the blue, for me, what really makes it is the candle that was lit. So, the idea that there's something in this picture that I'm not seeing yet. And I like how it slowly gives me more and more the more I look at it. It's just a fascinating picture. So my question to you on this is actually, you said that you print these out 40 by 40?
Yeah.
Do you edition?
Yes. Yes.
What's your edition sizes?
I have 4 sizes. They're actually 38 by 38, and then when they're framed, they're 40 by 40.
Okay.
That's the largest. And then we added a new size, 30 by 30. They're all squares, by the way.
Right.
And then 22 and 15. And the editions are like 10 and 15. The largest ones are an edition of 10, and the smaller ones are 15.
That's great to know for those watching, who want to add a piece to the collection. I would love to do that. So I want to start at sort of the beginning. I want to know about your start in the arts. And one of the questions I love asking is, can you remember back to, say, childhood? Was there anything that you were exposed to art that sort of was like a thunderclap for you? Did you ever have any young exposure?
I don't know. I always wanted to be an artist,
Okay.
which I know that sounds crazy. When I was a kid, my mother dabbled in painting for a little bit, and
Okay.
she didn't really finish very much. In eighth grade, I begged to take painting lessons with a lady in town, which I did, and we learned how to paint mostly roses.
Okay. Does that explain some of the flowers, a lot of the
I
flower
think so.
patterns?
I mean, they do keep cropping up. Um, but no, I think the flowers and stuff that has to do with decorative objects that are in the home,
Yeah.
that women use to decorate their spaces. Anyway, that was kind of it. I mean, then I had to, when it was time to go to college, my parents owned suburban newspapers. And so it was going to be that I was to take over the newspapers, and therefore I was to major in journalism, or at least English, writing. And I argued and argued and said, no, I want to take painting. And they said, no. So we compromised on graphic design.
Okay. Little did they know.
Right. And so I did do 4 years getting a graphic design degree, and I worked in that. And then I went back in photography because that's really all I ever did was photography.
Was photography part of your childhood? Like, did you have a camera as a kid?
I did. In fact, somewhere along the way, somebody sent me a picture of us at a Girl Scout or Brownie outing with me and my little Brownie Hawkeye.
Awesome.
But also there was, this is kind of funny, because we had newspapers, there was a photographer that was always around. And the photographer's name, he was an older man, and his name was John Stanks, of all things.
Okay.
And he always had this funny smell about him. And he would take our pictures as kids, and he'd take pictures for the paper, etc. And later, of course, I realized the smell was hypo. And and developer, he smelled like a dark room, basically. So
who at what point did you're in college, and then you get out of college, at what point did photography really take over? I mean, who was there somebody who lit the fire about that passion?
I mean, I had to take photography in my senior year.
Oh.
And my teacher was Art Sinsabaugh. And I met my then boyfriend in that class, which we then became very hot and heavy. And that kind of just got me going. And so when I came back to do a year of graduate work in graphic design, I ended up just staying in the darkroom all the time. So Sinsabaugh said, look, you got to go to graduate school in photography, and you got to go to the ID, which is in Chicago. And so I did. It was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
It all worked out.
Right.
So I'm curious, let me flash forward a little bit. You're in your studio. Now, I know that you work on series, and I do too, because I love the idea that has that sort of armature already set up. But I want to know about your creativity in terms of the ideas. So say you're going to work on something new. What is it that sparks your creativity to create a new piece? Is it like a swatch of fabric, or is it a bird in a tree, or is there
it could come from any number of things.
Really?
Yeah, I have a very, very, very large garage that's full of props and fabric.
That was one of my questions. What do you do with it?
And I have many rolls of fabric. So sometimes it's just like, oh, okay, we got to use this so we can, get rid of it. Or sometimes I have a whole notebook full of idioms and puns and things, because that's a lot of where the titles come from.
Okay.
So we kind of do that. The one we're working on now, which we haven't finished, is I wanted to do another blue picture, and I was thinking about Picasso and his blue period. And so Andy made us a really fun blue guitar. So we're gonna somehow we're gonna
weave that
into
all right.
a blue period picture. So sometimes it just comes from, random places.
Yeah.
It's
curious
kind of all over the place.
Because when I work in series 2, and I've always liked the idea that there's this armature, but then for each one I break a lot of my rules to make something new. And I'm assuming that you're kind of the same way. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, in our case, I don't think there are rules.
Okay.
I mean, what we have in the studio is a space that is 8 feet wide by 8 feet tall, and with kind of arms, like walls that come out 4 feet. And that's the stage for all of those pictures. And so we have a limited amount of space in order to do it. I would love to have a bigger studio and more space, but
yeah, what artist wouldn't, right?
Right, but that's what I got.
Although if you have a garage full of these props, I got to say, if you ever have a yard sale, you must have the mother of all yard sales. So, let me know about it. Okay. I would love to see all that. So I want to know about the pathway of your work. Assuming from when you first started to now that your methodology, that the work itself has changed over the years.
That's true.
So I'm kind of curious, has the change always been sort of a gradual change, or are you the kind of artist where you just make sudden, all right, we're all going to do something radical different now from now on? Are there
it's a little bit of both. When I first started in photography, mostly it was black and white then, and but I was really interested in color, and so I hogged all the color darkrooms in graduate school, and then things got easier, and I started making photographs. I photographed at night out in the world, and I part of it was because my family are snowbirds, and we would go to Florida every year. So I would photograph kind of the resort areas and bars and restaurants and stuff out there. So the idea was that I was always on the road. And if you talk to any photographer, that's all they want to do is get on the road and take pictures. Right?
Yeah. I just talked to David Graham about this yesterday. So yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, how he needs to be outside. That's the whole driving force for him.
He's one of my most favorite photographers too.
Oh yeah. I've known David for years. So it does lead me to the biggest question I really wanted to ask you today is, let's talk about color.
Okay.
Tell me what you think about color.
I think color is the most important thing, at least in my work, because it's very emotional. It sets obviously the tone and the mood. It can be energizing or depressing depending on how you use it. I'm very, very conscious of all the color that's in it. In fact, and because of all these pictures, we set everything up. We really try and match the colors in everything. So only every now and then do I tweak a color in Photoshop just to get it to work. But color is it's life, it's energy, it's everything.
Go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say that in my previous work, which I was photographing out in the world, and then I did a whole series of hot dog stands, and I did that because it was the only colorful thing that I saw in gray, wintry Chicago. And, these places were painted in red and blue and orange and stuff. And so color has always been an inspiration in terms of where the projects go. Actually.
Do you use color do you find using a color because of your current emotional state, or are you trying to manipulate the viewers with a color?
Not my emotional state.
Okay.
I think when we're younger photographers, we ascribe what we do according to our own emotions. But I have the kind of opposite. I think that the picture has to dictate what the color and the focus and the pattern and whatever has to be. So I kind of separate myself from that process. And it just becomes like, how do we do this and do
Right.
that? It becomes a more logistical issue.
That's fascinating. I love it when an artist can tell me the smallest little thing and it changes my understanding of their work. So you did it. You
Okay. Okay, good.
what kind of equipment do you use? What do you shoot with?
I shoot with a digital Hasselblad,
Okay. And
and yeah,
does it always go through a Photoshop cleaning process?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean I use Photoshop and obviously Bridge and I use big studio strobes too. So but yeah, I that's all I do now. When this project first started, I was using my old 500C Hasselblad
Mhm.
and scanning the film, and thank God,
Yeah, I
it's
know what you
gone.
mean. I got books
Right,
and books of slides. I'm like, what do I do with this now? It's
right.
very
But I have to tell you, I have thrown out slides. I keep thinking, do I
yeah.
want these? No, out they go. I
No,
know.
no.
So so it started out with film, but it's now gone completely digital. And boy, I'll tell you, the day I got rid of my darkroom was the best day of my
Yeah, I
life.
know what you mean. I had just the other day I was having a conversation about I inherited a whole bunch of books from my parents of family snapshots, and I realized that my daughter, she doesn't get that. She gets a thumb drive. Like, here you go,
Right, right.
everything.
Yeah.
So much better. So
Snap.
I want to ask you about this is kind of an odd question, but it's a question I love asking certain artists. Do you consider your works to be autobiographical at all in nature, or are you like trying to make a separate thing?
I think I think all work is autobiographical, first of all. And in my case, excuse me, some are, excuse me, I'm gonna have a sip here.
Mhm.
In my case, I think some of them are more closely related to my experience. Like there's a picture called Dished,
Mhm.
where this woman is sitting in a sink and there's a whole bunch of dishes around and stuff.
I love your titles.
Huh?
I
Yeah,
love your titles. Yeah,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Anyway, so she it came actually from an experience I had when, when you go off to college and you come back at Thanksgiving, right? Well, I came back and my mother had bought a dishwasher, which we had never had before. And I was like, you bought a dishwasher. What the hell? Basically. And she said, well, you were gone. What else was I going to do? So that's the kind of family I came from. And
Uh-huh.
and so humor is always in it. And
Yeah.
little experiences like that often show up in the pictures.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I like your work. There's not only the emotional value, but the content itself. Some of them do make me chuckle, right?
Oh,
So
good, good.
I really enjoy that because not every artist can put humor within their work. So that's
Right.
I've always found that very fascinating. So you're in your studio, you're making work. How often are you in your studio?
Oh, every day.
Every day? Do you make work every day?
Not on weekends.
Okay.
um, Mostly, we're here 4 or 5 days a week in the
Okay.
studio.
Wow, you really
Yeah, it can be intense.
I totally get it. So do you when you're working on a new piece, I mean, I know that you would take several just photographs and moving around the objects. Do you ever get to a point where you have to just, chuck it all and do a complete reshoot?
Oh yeah, we've done that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Like for instance, there was a picture. It's called Mad Mauve, and it started out. We had this felt, and we had this mauve colored felt, and we wanted to do a picture that was about upholstery, and so we upholstered the whole back of the set in this felt, and covered buttons and everything, and then we put some matching color fabric in as kind of a drape, and it was like, eventually I just was like, I don't like this upholstery thing. And in the end, we just kept adding more fabric and it became a completely different picture. So, that happens a lot, actually.
So do you ever, have you ever, with works of art that are discarded, I mean, do you get to the point where you print them out and then discard them? It doesn't work, or are you always editing on screen?
I'm editing on screen, and then I don't have it right with me. I have a notebook of like 8.5 by 11, so that we have a notebook of every picture.
Okay.
And whether that gets printed large or not is another issue. But
if you keep a notebook, do you maybe sketch out your ideas beforehand, or is it always just in your head?
If there's a sketch, it's so loose that you wouldn't be able to recognize it.
Yeah.
It's like a couple of scribbles, and I'll be talking to Andy, and I'll be like, okay, I think we should put her here, and it's very, very loose.
As I keep asking other artists this question, and I find that it seems to me, and this isn't it's not universal, but as a lot of artists get older, their sketchbooks become more like just personal language of marks, like almost indecipherable bird scratching, right?
Right, exactly. Totally.
That you can use that as a title, by the way.
Okay, got it. I'll write that down.
Right.
Bird scratch.
So you're in your studio all the time. Is there anything that you do for inspiration in your studio? Do you like look at other artists, or is it like, what, when you're stuck?
Sometimes it's more like if we're working on an idea and we need some inspiration, a lot of times we'll just go to Pinterest.
Okay.
And find a lot of this stuff has to do with vintage stuff. And so looking at vintage interiors and things like that, which is easy on Pinterest as opposed to other places. We'll do that a lot.
When you go shopping for your images, I'm finding a lot of artists use like eBay and things to find for color specific things. Is that where you do, or are you in like more flea markets kind of a
thing? I'm in more thrift stores.
Thrift stores.
But I say that, but the truth is, I'll go to antique malls, I'll go to flea markets, I'll go to estate
always
sales.
On the hunt.
I'm always on the hunt, and I'm finding stuff. And the only time, like I said with that blue picture, we needed more blue stuff. So then we headed down to our local thrift store, see if they had any blue whatever vases or cups or something.
That sounds like a fun job working for you, honestly. But count me in. I'll put my resume in.
Okay, fine.
So I've got time for just one final question.
Sure.
Fun question I ask everybody. Very easy. What does making art do for you?
What doesn't it do? I mean, it's kind of what I do. I don't have a choice. My husband always, he was an administrator in art schools, basically, and he would always say at graduation or something, he'd say, if you have a choice of being an artist or something else, be something else, because most artists don't have a choice. And
right.
That's true for me. I mean, this is just kind of what I do. So what do I get out of it? I don't know, everything. It's this, it's a constant need to put out, but it's also input of looking at work that you've made and thinking either, oh, I can do that better, or let's try a different tack, or okay, we're good with this, so it's pretty much work right now. Yeah. It's not, it doesn't have that la-di-da magical feeling. I think I'm too old or something.
Nonsense.
Right.
Well, Patty, I really want to thank you for stopping by today to talk to me about your work. I love these conversations where I now have more questions than answers that I started with. So I want to thank you for coming by and talking to me. And I also want to thank everybody who stopped in to watch ArtShow today. Of course, we love it when you like, share, and subscribe. That helps push our things forward. If you have any questions about today's interview, you can always stick them in the comment section and we can pass them on to Patty if we are not able to answer them yourselves. So thank you for watching. And again, Patty, thank you for coming by today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.